Welcome to Seller Sessions. I am your host today, Sharon Evan, and today we are going to be talking about sourcing from Vietnam with Jim Kennemer from Cosmo Sourcing. Hey, Jim, welcome back to Seller Sessions.
Oh, it's great to be back, huh? Yeah, it's a pleasure, as
How
always.
you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Can't complain.
That's
Nice. It's
good.
starting to get a little bit cooler here, so pretty good weather.
So you've been on Seller Sessions before. Danny had you
hmm
on last year, and Danny usually doesn't let me bring people on that he's already had. But I said to him that this is such a relevant subject right now with everything that's
Yeah.
going on with the world when it comes to supply chain and shipping prices. And basically, the whole entire supply chain is pretty broken. A
Yeah.
lot of people are looking to source outside of China. And
hmm
people are going to all sorts of places: Mexico, US, Vietnam, Thailand. And I thought that Vietnam is such a great subject to speak about. But before we get into it, and I quickly share to some of the groups, could you please tell, for anyone who doesn't know you, a little bit more about you and your company and how you got to sourcing from Vietnam? Because
Yeah,
it's
of course.
interesting to know.
Yeah. So I'm Jim Kennemer. I'm the founder and managing director of Cosmo Sourcing. I started Cosmo Sourcing in 2013 formally and unofficially in 2012 in China. I was living overseas and actually working a totally unrelated job. But just being in China, some friends and contacts were basically asking me, "Hey, I need you to go check out this factory for me, or could you do this and or find a factory?" So I started doing that as kind of a side job, and then 2013 I quit my job and decided to do it full time. Yeah, in 2014 I kind of was looking around because there's tons of sourcing agents in China, so I was kind of looking at the next big thing. So at the time, Trans-Pacific Partnership was about to be a thing, which got canceled. So I was actually decided to 2014 move to Vietnam and start a sourcing company there. Despite TPP getting canceled, I still decided to stick with Vietnam and have been sourcing from Vietnam since 2014.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we've been working there for quite a bit, and yeah, we really love Vietnam.
Amazing. So when did you say you
Yeah,
left Vietnam? I didn't hear that part.
I moved to Vietnam in 2014 and lived there for about a year and a half, and I've been going back pretty much months at a time since then. For about, I would say, about 3 to 6 months a year, every year since. And we have a team based in Vietnam too that can handle everything.
So today, you guys at Cosmo Sourcing are mostly sourcing from Vietnam, but you
Yeah,
started out mostly with China?
correct. Yeah, about 70% of our projects are Vietnam based and about 30% China. And yeah, before the trade war, it was about 70% China and 30% Vietnam. And then pretty much as soon as the trade war happened, Vietnam just kind of shot up and focus. So we kind of been handling a big surge of projects from Vietnam since then.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have so many questions and so many
Go ahead.
notes. So I'm going to get like straight into it.
hmm
And I'd like to first of all, I've been teaching myself a lot about sourcing from countries that I'm not used to sourcing from
Yeah.
because for the last 17 years, I've been sourcing from China.
hmm
And that is my thing. And then now suddenly all the stuff is going on, and a lot of people, well, I haven't actually only been sourcing from China. I also source from Poland, but that's only because I've got
Oh,
contacts
nice.
there. But other
Yeah.
Asian countries and other countries around the US, etc., are new to me, and I'm doing a lot of in-depth research, and I've been doing a lot of in-depth research on Vietnam as well, which is also how I found you.
hmm Okay.
Um, when it comes to Vietnam, it's not going to make sense for every single product, and it's not going to make sense for every single person developing a product. But
Yeah.
if we start off with Vietnam's strengths, so
Of course.
industries that they are stronger in and most logically to look into, etc., what sort of industries would that be?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest ones are apparel. We do a lot of clothing projects in Vietnam. Everything from activewear, yoga wear, fancy suits. Also shoes. We do leather shoes and some sports shoes and some custom shoes as well. And furniture, and most specifically wooden furniture, but furniture of all types. And wooden goods. We do tons of wooden goods from Vietnam. I would say about 40% of our projects are wooden goods of
Wow.
various types. Yeah.
And although
So yeah, we do everything from toys, furniture, and etc.
Did you say toys? Or did I mishear?
Yeah, we do some toys, like wooden toys.
Really? Vietnam does toys? I didn't know that. Is it wooden toys or just like toys?
Oh
in
yeah,
general?
we did like we've done building blocks before, and then kind of, it's hard to describe this one, a sensory toy that's kind of for stimulate different textures for autistic kids. That's kind of a unique project that we did a few months ago.
Because it's still like a cut and sew product, so that would make sense. Because I can't really see people going to Vietnam for like injection molding and things like that.
They do injection molding in Vietnam. We're actually, I'm not sure if I can show the name brand. Cover it up, but we're doing some injection molding shoelaces with plastic grips. We just got these samples in yesterday, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so we do injection mold. It's mainly plastic injection molding, but it's not a huge thing, but it is common. We're trying to get this project started with the injection molded chairs, plastic chairs, like the stackable kind for schools and whatnot. That's kind of early phases, so I can't speak too much of the results yet, but I'm sure they'll be good.
Yeah. So when in my research, when it came to like Vietnam, I saw like textiles, luggage, bags, anything that's really cut and sew.
Yeah, those are definitely the biggest ones.
Yeah. And then you said shoes, and I saw that Nike and Adidas even moved a lot of their manufacturing to Vietnam rather than China as well.
Yeah, they have some huge shoe factories there, like massive. Like I want to say they produce like 2.5 billion shoes a year, if I remember correctly. And I think those numbers are from like 2018 or 19. And beyond that, there are tons of smaller shoe factories too. You can't work with the Nike shoe factories, and I get tons of requests for people who are like, "Oh, I know Nike makes in Vietnam. Can you just buy me Nike shoes from the factory?" And I just want to go and say, "No, I can't."
Yeah. And then you also said wood as well. So I told you that like I'm working on a project right now that the product is made out of structural plywood. I see that Catherine that's watching us asked, does wood also include, for example, bamboo? So can you give us so like what kind of wood would make sense for people to look into when it comes to Vietnam? Because I originally asked you before we went live if Vietnam sources their wood from other countries or if it's from Vietnam. So can you tell us a little bit about wooden products? Because there's a lot of people that sell that.
Yeah, Vietnam has their own plantations in country. The most popular woods are acacia, rubber wood, some pine. They also do tons of bamboo. Bamboo is super sustainable, by the way. So if you might be looking to sustainable projects, bamboo is the way to go. And they also, with ASEAN, which is Association of Southeast Asian Nation Agreement, there's a massive free trade agreement, so they can import freely from Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, etc. And so I know Thailand grows a lot of teak, so we'll get some teak imports that we work with. That's pretty good, high quality. But yeah, the majority of the woods we work with are bamboo, acacia, rubber wood. Rubber wood looks extremely similar to oak, to the point that it's very often mislabeled as oak. So it's same density, same color. And so it's pretty good wood for that if you were looking at oak. And yeah, bamboo is super popular. We do lots of bamboo projects. We're doing like cutting boards right now, kind of some tapas bowls type things. And yeah, MDF and any plywood projects too are great for in Vietnam. And a lot of factories too have their own plywood production in-house, so they can kind of really get customized plywood. So you can specify the thickness and layers and everything too.
So that kind of leads me into the question of, for example, like you said, like I can't remember the exact word you said, but it led me to the question of customizing. So in China, you can customize, like China's, the biggest country in the world for manufacturing. China's like a one-stop shop, right?
Yeah, it really is. Absolutely.
You like setting up supply chain in general outside of China is harder in my experience because you have to find someone or something for everything, where else in most factories it's like a one-stop shop, right? They've got many of them, they'll have engineers and they'll have like in-house, and if they don't, they'll go down the street, and they meet their neighbor that does, and they can ask them a question. And in Vietnam, how efficient are they when it comes to that? And also how open are they to customization?
You can do customization, but one of the big things is like you mentioned designers. Vietnamese factories rarely have designers or engineers, or they have their own engineers in-house. But so if you're a client and you're looking to manufacture in Vietnam, you do need to have your own product spec sheets made in advance, and you know your specific CAD files or .dwg files, step files, etc. Already prepared, and they'll make it to it. But yeah, in terms of customization, it really depends on the type of customization. You can obviously do a lot, and Vietnam is close to China. So for many projects, like let's take a backpack, for example, Vietnam's great at cut and sew. So anything they can make all the fabric components in-house, fine. But then beyond that, like you'll oftentimes need like, you know, they want carabiners or like custom specific zippers or et cetera. So it's not uncommon for us to get those imported from China, like batch order and then shipped to Vietnam, but it does add time. But yeah, you do have to be very selective with the customizations you do. So it's, yeah, once we get clients, a lot of times you got to let them know in advance that we can't do everything. And then we can tell them if we can or can't do something after we talk to the factories. So we need to like start a project, get in contact with factories, ask them what their capabilities are. Yeah, and there are times when the factories, and we can't find a factory that can do a customization. And, you know, we got to tell them that you got to change this if you want to made in Vietnam. It's the unfortunate truth of Vietnam not being the true one-stop shop like China is.
Do you feel like Vietnam's working towards becoming, I mean, I don't think that Vietnam's going to have the capacity that China has. I mean, Vietnam has just, what, 100 million people compared to
93 million, but yeah, basically 1/15 the size.
Of China. It's got like what, 1.3 billion. So I don't think it's going to have the capacity, but do you feel like it could be, they are trying to go in that direction, sort of like how India is trying to go in that direction? Do you think it's happening in Vietnam?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a lot of factories are fully aware of what China's capable of doing and that they got to compete directly with them. So factories are making significant investments into making more advanced manufacturing, more customization. About 5 years ago when I started, factories were basically specialized in one thing, like it's a plastic injection molding factory. They only do plastics. It's a wooden factory. They only do wood, etc. So a lot of factories will all of a sudden kind of pick a product category, like say furniture, and they'll make furniture of all type. They'll have their own metal assembly factory over here to make metal components. They'll have their own wooden. And that's something that I've really kind of noticed in the last few years where they're kind of combining a bunch of different specialties in-house to make a single product group. But yeah, they're definitely advancing. They're definitely trying to get more customizations and more trying to move up in the supply chain, the supply value chain.
And then what is a lot of factories' capacity like? So if somebody, you know, comes and drops a bomb on them and say, hey, you know, I need an order of 10,000 units. Are there large factories that have that kind of capacity in Vietnam compared to like China when many do? Yeah,
no, there definitely are huge factories. And a lot of factories, like we were talking about Nike and Adidas, they make millions of products. We work with furniture factories that are comically huge. I don't know how to describe them, but just take like an NBA arena and multiply that by 15.
Wow.
And each one, like, there's like 2 factories that, they're huge. I mean, they make everything for IKEA and all that, and it can handle tens of thousands. One of the things, though, with Vietnamese factories, like capacity, I mean, a lot of clients start out and they're like, oh, I want to start out small, you know, orders of 1 to 500 units. And in China, a lot of the big factories will take those small projects on. But if they're a big factory in Vietnam, they're going to stick with big orders. And so you kind of need to pick the factory that's at the level that you're looking at. So if you're a large company, like a large order, you can go straight to the big factories and get big orders. And those have a lot more experience with exporting like international standards. But with small orders, you kind of do have to pick the smaller, medium-sized factories to really go with. And it's kind of pick a factory that's at the same capacity. But it's definitely some good big factories there.
I was watching an interview by a hardcore sourcing guy. I can't remember his name yet, but his name right now. But I even wrote this down for the day that I brought out my notes for the day that I talk about sourcing from Vietnam. And he compared Vietnam to IKEA, because you just said IKEA. And he said that that Vietnam is like the IKEA furniture of supply chain because you have to assemble everything yourself. And that's what I said, that, you know, when you compare it to China, that's like a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
And then when you go to Vietnam, I don't know, that was quite an old interview, but I don't know if it's still like that. So like when you get to a supplier in China, for example, you would give them your spec sheets, etc. And, you know, that, and by the way, obviously, and you know this, when you go to a supplier in China, sometimes they will have an engineer on hand, or they will have a designer on hand. And it's really, really easy. You tell them, I need a sample. Boom. You know, if you're at the factory, they come back 20 minutes later, they've got a sample for you. You know, they've got that. And they will, in many scenarios, packaging, everything, freight, everything they've got honed down. So is it sort of, you just said I can, it reminded me of that. Would you say it's still relevant to the way it is right now in Vietnam, or have they improved on that?
I would say IKEA is kind of apt description. Anytime we do a cut and sew item, like you have to get very detailed product spec. I'm talking like literally every single piece needs to be detailed and how it's stitched together. We personally have a network of designers that, you know, not in-house per se, but, you know, we can do introductions for clients. But yeah, the factories, they don't have that capability in-house. Like they'll have engineers, but those engineers' job is to take those product spec sheets and tell them to the workers how to do it. But they're not creative in that regard of making the products. So yeah, it's definitely like that. And I'm sure they'll probably get to that point at some point, but it's not a big trend I've noticed or something I've come across that much.
I think China's just, obviously they've got like 20 years ahead of Vietnam in manufacturing, or maybe even more. But China has a lot of problems, and that's why people are looking now to source in other countries, and we'll get into trade war and into tariffs and all that in a minute. But China is very efficient, which is, people could be hearing this and laughing, because how could we use the word China inefficient? But when it comes to supply chain, when it comes to supply chain compared to any other country, and people will see it now as the supply chain world gets crazy and everyone is trying to find other countries to source from. Suddenly, you know, I'm going through this. Suddenly I'm like, man, China's so much more efficient at this. Like I was complaining all the time about China. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, I just wish I didn't have to be in the situation where, you know, looking at other countries is going to make so much more sense for certain products. Yeah. So I think that on an efficiency level, probably Vietnam isn't there yet, but I think a lot of countries around, like Vietnam, India, et cetera, are working to get to that point.
They're definitely improving, but they are behind in that regard. Projects, they do take a little bit longer. There's not like the fire in them to get it done quickly and efficiently. And like we said, like a lot of times with the supply chains, we do have to order components from China, and they get shipped from China to Vietnam. So you have to factor that in. Well, China, they're next door. So they get it within hours versus weeks in Vietnam. And another thing too is just the infrastructure in Vietnam is behind. Like the roads are much more congested. The ports are more congested. The electrical grid does have brownouts and blackouts occasionally. There's a rainy season twice a year that does have big effects. Like we work factories that are huge, big, and modern, but you still take a dirt road to get to them. Which hopefully that changes soon. But yeah, it does just kind of need some improvement in terms of efficiency to get things moving quickly.
So let's talk a little bit about advantages of sourcing from Vietnam. And again, I just remind that the reason I've been doing a show almost every week recently about sourcing from other places apart from China, simply because it's extremely, extremely relevant to right now. And a lot of people forget that, you know, China is not the only country in the world that you can source from. There are many other countries that could make sense for many, many products. So what are some advantages for people sourcing from Vietnam? Yeah,
I think with some products, Vietnam has a huge advantage, like cut and sew items and whatnot. In general, the technical skill of the workers is a little bit higher. It's a younger workforce. So for heavy engineered products, they are pretty good at doing a lot of things. The costs generally are cheaper. Unfortunately, labor costs have gone up just within the last 2 years in Vietnam as demand has increased because of trade war. it used to be like 30-40% cheaper in a lot of regards, and I would say the cost advantage now is maybe 10-15% cheaper. But yeah, and the things they do make, they're really good at, like furniture and wooden goods. So I would really kind of focus on the advantages they have in certain industries. Vietnam does grow their wood country, so they have a lot of good high quality tropical hardwoods that are great for furniture and whatnot.
What about freight? Currently, as you know, everyone that sells on Amazon or everyone that makes products knows, or imports, exports knows that shipping is crazy high. You know, we've got containers from China anywhere up to like 25K for a 40-foot container. What is shipping, like freight, for example, from Vietnam? Is that cheaper? And then tariffs. Does the U.S. have a trade? Is there a trade agreement with Vietnam?
Yeah, there's a trade agreement with Vietnam. It's a bilateral trade agreement. It's not free trade, but it's preferential trade treatment with Vietnam. So there's no special tariffs or special taxes or anything for Vietnam specifically. Depending on the product, you're going to pay anywhere from 3 to 14% taxes, but that's going to be the same taxes you'll pay anywhere that doesn't have a free trade agreement. So it's going to be the same. In Thailand.
In bags with the Trump tariffs for a bag coming from China, you could be paying up to 48%. Because of the Trump tariffs. So in Vietnam, it would be something like 17% to make the same bag.
I would say bags are like 8, if I remember correctly.
They're what?
8%.
I think it depends on the bag. Yeah,
it depends on the bag, and it's kind of luxury or material. But yes, you're generally going to pay the typical taxes for importing is roughly 10%.
So you could actually, just as an example, is just say you're making a bag, and right now, not only are you paying so much more for shipping from China, and not only do you have the Trump tariffs, as long as you're doing everything correctly and not lying about the HS code, etc., from China, you're probably paying anywhere between 17 to 48% for a bag, for example. So just by moving your manufacturing to Vietnam, you could be, for example, saving potentially a lot of money, both on the tariffs, on the actual manufacturing of the product, and on the shipping of the product.
Yeah.
Would that be a correct statement?
I would say everything but shipping. Shipping tends to be about the same price to a little bit more expensive at Vietnam. But shipping is more expensive, but not drastically so.
I reached out to, so I have I sell on Amazon myself, and also I producing products ever since I was little, way before I even started selling on Amazon. And I've got a very good relationship with Unicargo, which is the freight company that I work with. And I reached out to Rafael, the CEO of Unicargo, and I asked him about sourcing currently, right now, September 2021, from Vietnam, and he said to me that it is cheaper to bring a container right now from Vietnam.
I've done a direct comparison, but generally it's more expensive, but
that's what he said. And then he said that I think he said that it depends on the shipping line, and then he also said that they've got like some crazy cheap prices right now on air shipping from Vietnam to the US. So I don't know.
I don't know. I just paid $600 to send a 12-pound sample to Vietnam. So
that's a lot of money.
Isn't that cheap?
I guess it depends on the connection there. Okay. So you're saying that at this point, as far as like freight isn't something that you would necessarily save on, but you don't have obviously the Chinese, the Trump tariffs, and then obviously
I think with freight is not the biggest expense. I mean, obviously tariffs are a big expense, but
right now,
I mean, it's a big expense, but like we do,
freight's the biggest expense right now. I mean, look,
it's a big expense. Yeah, I was probably missing a statement, but the thing is, you're comparing like 10%.
40-foot container before COVID was what, $3,000 to $4,000 from China?
I would say closer about 4,500 was our kind of what we penciled in for our estimation before COVID, and it's probably over 6,000 now.
What? It's 25K now. Between 20 to 25K now, 40-foot container.
All right.
That we've been speaking about this every single week in almost here, but containers currently from China are like anywhere between 18 to 25K depending, and there's surcharges as well, which can be anywhere up to 5K. It's like crazy, crazy expensive. That's why I do think that it's probably cheaper now bringing from Vietnam than to bringing from
cheaper in Vietnam
China.
then.
I'm actually, I just thought about the statement that I just said about bringing bags over, and I think anyone that makes Kanso products need to look into Vietnam right now. Okay, there's so many questions here. I've been ignoring the people actually watching us. So I'm going to 1 second stop with my questions, and we're going to quickly answer some stuff here. Let's see. Okay. Saibi is back. He's just Saibi's been away for a bit. Hi, Sharon. Back to listening live after being defeated by COVID. It sucks. Well, you made it, Saibi, I think, so that's good. Glad to hear you're back. With wooden products, what about the components like plastic moldings and rubber plastics, wheels, etc.?
Yeah, so we do some plastic molding and rubber forming in Vietnam, but it really depends on, like, if you have the volume and willing to pay for the mold fees, it's perfectly fine to do in Vietnam. But if you're like doing a few hundred toys, and it's a lot of times easier to import from China if they want a pre-made product. Like if you're willing to actually pay for a mold to be made, then you can do it in Vietnam.
David asks, can suppliers in Vietnam also do packaging in general?
Yeah, they can.
Yeah. So basically, what are the average lead times for things like samples and mass production?
It really depends on the product. We typically, first samples, it takes about 1 to 2 weeks to get made, plus shipping. And the revisions take about a week. Just with Anywhere, we often get 2, 3, 4 samples made, just because people are demanding one exactly right. So that's going to be about a month-ish. And then for production, for a basic product, I would anticipate 1 to 3 months would be a typical lead time once you approve the sample.
For the production, or is that from?
For production. Okay. And that's the full production run. Yeah.
Saibi said, what are like for like product prices versus China? That could be a tough one to put you on the spot with.
Yeah, like I said, it really depends on the product category. I would say cut and sew items are cheaper. I would say cut and sew items generally are probably about 10, 15, 20% cheaper, in that range. Wood items tend to be probably about the same, 10% cheaper. Other items, it's really hard to say what they are exactly. Shoes would be a lot cheaper because I would say shoes. Yeah.
Shoes, I think that the ones that you said exactly, like Kanso wooden products and shoes are a good one. David asked, is it quite easy to vet suppliers and find inspection agencies there?
Yeah. In terms of inspection, there's no issues. Basically same as China. You just find a good inspection agency, get the address, and they'll go visit. In terms of vetting suppliers, there's some advantages. Like Vietnam has a service called Vietnam Credit. That's a government-run service that kind of keeps tabs on. It's made for banks mainly, but it just makes sure that companies are in good credit ratings. And it basically just gives them a yes or no that they're creditworthy. It's technically a government agency called Vietnam Credit. And they just check the creditworthiness, and pretty much it says, yes, this company exists and they're in good standing with banks. So in terms of that regard, you can kind of check the registration, whatnot, pretty easily. And we'll travel to factories all the time. There's pretty much a few main production areas. So we're based out of Ho Chi Minh, or our team's based out of Ho Chi Minh City. So we'll just get in a car, drive 30 minutes and visit factories all the time.
I read that you know how in China there's certain areas that specialize in certain industries. So I read that Vietnam was trying to do that as well, and then that the people protested against it.
I haven't heard too much about the protest, but I mean, like a lot of electronics are kind of based up in Hanoi. So like Apple is starting to make their AirPod production. These actually say made in Vietnam, by the way. You can see. There's like all the electronics, the higher end electronics, like Samsung Galaxy phones, AirPods are based out of Hanoi. So all the electronics are based kind of there, and they kind of do car production. But in terms of smaller productions, basically the ones that FBA sellers would be buying from are based out of in or around Ho Chi Minh City, Binh Dong, and the neighboring provinces. And so they kind of do. I think they just have it naturally. I don't know if the government does have incentives, but in setting up huge industrial parks, but Yeah, there's just going to be natural gravitation towards certain areas for factories.
Catherine said, what are MOQs like generally?
I would say a little bit, they're higher than China generally. For cut and sew items, the bare minimum we'll do is 500, just because I know no factory will take orders less than 500, unless you're doing like handmade stuff like suits or fancy dresses. But I would say 2,000 generally is what you really need to have to get good factories interested. Like we said, there were factories of all size, small factories, big factories, and the big factories generally are more experienced, higher quality. More QC and quality assurance. And so those factories, I think what you really want to focus on is at least 2,000 units to get quotes from them and get production made from them.
You just used this happens to me where when you're talking, you say something and I'm like, don't forget. And then I forgot. You said something. Hold on, let me just remember what it was. Oh, I can't remember, but there was something that you just said that I was like, oh, I need to remember to speak about that.
Yeah.
It'll come to me.
Was it factory sizes or something like that?
It was something to do with the MOQs. Oh, I wanted to ask. MOQs. I think that I can't remember if this is what I was, but it's what I'm going to ask now. In China, where the culture is very much like they're used to working with foreign buyers. And, if I come to a Chinese supplier and I said, look, I want to make this product and I want this and whatever, anything I want, the answer is usually yes.
Yeah.
Even if they can't. And then they'll find a way to do it. Right?
The yes. Yeah.
The yes. They first of all say yes, and then they'll find a way to do it. And maybe sometimes the quality won't be, or there'll be issues, but the answer is usually yes.
Mm-hmm.
In Vietnam, how does that compare?
No, they're not afraid to say no. They'll just show straight up they can't do it.
With Vietnam, in my experience, it's first of all no.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe it's a yes. So what's the culture like there?
Yeah, they definitely do say no, and you do have to chase up the factories a lot more than you do in Vietnam. They know what they can and can't make, and they are a lot more selective in factories. China, they just want every project they can get. More projects, more money, I guess. But Vietnam, I don't know. They kind of get satisfied when they're running well and just kind of get really selective about what projects to take. Because we work with factories that, they started small, and then like there's one factory we worked with and they were process upgrading. But as soon as they kind of build a new expansion to the factory, they pretty much just shut off all small orders. So, they definitely will say no, and they're honest about what they can and can't make. So if they can't make something, they'll tell you explicitly, we can't make this. Yeah.
Hold on, we've got so many questions here. I never usually have so many questions, and I'm ignoring my own. I think I'll come back. Guys, I'll come back. Thank you for everyone watching us live. We've also got people that will be listening back to this on the podcast. So I want to get through some of my questions so we don't end up sitting here for hours. Let's talk a little bit about quality issues, which is one of the, not one of the biggest, but a major problem, products from China. What is quality like for products coming from Vietnam?
I would say generally better, but you have to really kind of be on them to highlight production issues. Like we almost always recommend doing 2 inspections, one pre-inspection before you start production, just make sure they have all the equipment, and one post-production to make sure the quality is good. There would be a lot of first order where the stitching's off, or actually wooden goods are really big problematic, because when you do cutting on wooden goods, there's a lot of splintering anytime you're in DF. Like, you need holes to be exact. So there's obviously going to be issues with that. And so you do have to be pretty strict with both your inspectors, make sure they get everything, and then you really highlight them. I would say it's kind of, you got to be pretty involved with your suppliers in Vietnam in that regard. And you got to really know what you want and what's good quality and kind of really hold them to it. It does get pretty intense because you're going to be lots of back and forth with suppliers about a dozen small things. So it's just one of those things you got to be on top of. They don't, like in China, I know Chao Dao, the whole corner cutting philosophy is a big thing in China. We haven't really encountered that too much in Vietnam. Like if they say they'll make something, they'll make it as they say, which is great. But yeah, it's like it's just older equipment or something. You got to kind of be on top of it. So yeah, there's going to be quality issues. There's no earth that's going to make perfect products every time. As amazing that would be.
So, I mean, inspections are a must every time, no matter what.
Yeah.
I always say this, no matter what, no matter how long you've been working with a supplier, it doesn't matter. But in finding an inspection company in Vietnam is not that difficult to do. Is
No.
Kennemer, for example, in Vietnam?
Yeah. We worked with them before. Yeah, there's tons of inspection companies. We work with a lot, Tesco, Kiva, Kima. Vietnam, there's specific ones for Vietnam inspection, VIS. It's a popular one. So yeah, we kind of rotate through them. We're not loyal to any one inspection company at the moment. But yeah, we never had an issue with range inspection. We've pretty much the only time we've had an issue is one factory was really pushing back about getting inspection, didn't want inspection done instantly, which turns out they had QC issues that they want to fix before they had inspectors, and which took weeks. But that was the only time.
How hard is it to get certifications for certain products that are made in Vietnam?
Harder, I would say. It really depends on which product specifications you want, but the factories aren't too ISO is fine. They're not going to have an issue with any of the ISO 9000 or any issues. That's super popular. But FCS, as far as sustainably FSC, that one you're kind of need to. There's not many factories to get it because the thing is the factories have to pay for those inspections and certifications out of pocket themselves. So the factories that do have it, they tend to work with for instance, West Elm. They have exclusive contracts with the factories, and so they'll pay their factories to get these certifications, but the factories aren't going to get them and then kind of appeal to clients. Like BSEI, I know a lot of clients want that one, and there's not too many factories that have it. We try and do an organic cotton project, and the cotton's fine in Vietnam. They're just not certified with GOT. And so I know one client kind of passed on Vietnam because there were grand total of, I want to say, 14 factories in Vietnam that had GOT certification. And yeah, they kind of passed on that project just because they couldn't get it. But yeah.
I can still hear you, Jim. It's okay. We can hear you.
Sorry about that. Someone's trying to FaceTime me.
It's all right.
I'll silence that.
It was leading me to the question of, with China, I always have certain agreements in place. So whether it is in an agreement, both in Mandarin and in English, or whether it's having an in-depth general agreement or a purchaser agreement, etc. I always do things properly. It doesn't mean that I always can protect it, but it's very, very important. So when it comes to Vietnam, let's just say I've invented a product and a wooden product. Okay, I've invented a product that is made out of wood and I'm looking to Vietnam. I walk on eggshells with that type of thing when it comes to China. I don't send anything over until everything's signed, very, very suspicious of every supplier no matter what. How is that when it comes to having your intellectual property, stolen or your ideas given to competitors or things like that in Vietnam?
We have NNN agreements that are definitely standard, and we do have Vietnamese and English NNNs, like you said. So it's definitely something that we do, and it's pretty accepted to have NDAs and NNN agreements. We haven't had anyone in Vietnam rip off, knock on wood, products yet. But I would say that kind of goes back to the sophistication of the suppliers. With Chinese suppliers being sophisticated where they can do their designs in-house is kind of double-edged sword. And that we do work with a lot of clients who source in China, have the designers make their product, and the thing is Chinese own those design specs. And so when you're actually working in Vietnam, you create them, you own the design specs. So it's something that you kind of have a little bit more control in. And there's just not a distribution network. I mean, they can obviously use AliExpress or Alibaba, but they don't really take advantage of that. And it's just kind of something that hasn't been too big of an issue that we've had to deal with. But yeah, we do have end-to-end agreements, and we kind of are selective about sharing. A lot of clients are like you, where they want to protect their items, and so we'll do a search for factories and then kind of pick the 2 or 3 that are suitable, and then once we have those vetted and verified, then we'll kind of share the product designs at that point to keep everything safe. But yeah, it's hard to enforce. We have NNNs overseas when you're, dealing with a Vietnamese factory and Vietnamese lawyers and as a foreigner. So their courts are going side with one side versus the other, and same in China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's in China. I think they're a little bit more used to it. I don't know how it is in Vietnam, but well, that's not true. I have had suppliers come in and, you don't trust us and blah, blah, blah. And of course I play the game, but no, I don't trust you. I don't know you yet. But, there's a right time for everything. So for people that, obviously the answer to the question.
Trust but verify. Yeah.
I was going to say the answer to what I'm going to ask now is going to be that obviously they can come to a sourcing company like you, but let's just say that if somebody wants to do a little bit of research on their own, what resources are out there, or what websites are out there, or networks or fairs or whatever it is, where can people start to even look for suppliers and sourcing in Vietnam?
Honestly, Google is one of the best resources. Google's not banned in China, or not banned in Vietnam. So you can actually just kind of search factories directly that way. They'll have their own business page even. Yellow Pages is probably the other best one.
What was the first thing you said? Because you cut out the very first one. Google. Okay. Yeah. Google.
Yeah. And Google is not banned. So you can just use Google freely in Vietnam, and they use Google freely. So there's no issues with that. Yellow Pages is pretty good resource.
Wow.
Yeah. Yellow Pages in Vietnam.
I'm going to write that down in my little notebook. Yellow Pages.
Yeah. It's yellowpages.vn. So not yellowpages.com.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can just go in and look for factories that way. And there's a handful of Alibaba knockoffs that come and go. Alibaba does exist in Vietnam, and you can find Vietnamese suppliers there, but Vietnam just is not trusting at all of Chinese tech companies like Alibaba. And so, I would say less than 10% of factories in Vietnam are on Alibaba. And even then the response rate is super low. We personally, in terms of our company, we are pretty proactive in kind of finding factories ourselves, using everything from trade shows, various databases. We maintain our own database in-house. And so, the factories aren't as sophisticated, but they do use the basic things like that.
So there are trade shows, etc.
That before COVID, and they're kind of coming back slowly.
So that it kind of sounds like if you want to source from Vietnam now, after COVID, it's best to go to a sourcing company, because it's probably going to be, harder. I mean, I will say,
I can't give an honest answer, but yes.
Well, of course,
you should always go to a sourcing company.
I agree. It was a stupid thing to say. But anyway, I will say that one of my favorite ways to find suppliers right now in countries like, for example, the US, is actually going on YouTube and typing in, USA manufacturer or injection molding manufacturer. And I did that for Vietnam, and some things did come out. I don't know if it was like a Nike warehouse maybe or whatever, but there were some YouTube videos that actual factories had done on YouTube as well, which I thought was pretty cool. How what kind of education level do workers have in the Vietnam factories? Because I was reading I think it was an essay or something. Somebody was comparing sourcing in Mexico to sourcing in Vietnam, and they were talking about the level of education in Vietnam being so much higher, for example, than Mexico. So are Vietnamese workers, I would say, highly educated? Yeah,
I would definitely say so. They're really good with technical details and whatnot. They'll highlight engineering things and kind of correct things on occasion too. Yeah, anytime any manager or any supervisor is going to probably have an engineering degree of some sort. They tend to stock their factories more with engineers than business people, which is both good and bad. They're good because the engineers know exactly what they're doing and can tell you, but at the same time they have zero sales skill and minimal English skills. And yeah, but the education level is great. A lot of factory managers, like the higher level factory managers and owners, they'll even be American educated. Like we deal with a lot of American educated factories or European educated workers. And another thing too, we haven't really touched too much on this. Kind of segue to another topic is Vietnam does allow foreign ownership of factories. So a lot of times we will work with like Japanese owned and managed factories, Taiwanese owned and managed factories, South Korean, and even occasionally European owned factories. Like we do some furniture design that's owned by a Denmark company, and so we actually deal with Danish people for that project. And we actually, even though we're buying from a Vietnamese furniture factory.
Is that something you find in China? Not really.
No, China is very strict about who can own capital and whatnot, and pretty much only Chinese can own Chinese factories. In fact, only Chinese can own Chinese factories.
That I knew, but I didn't know that a lot of the factories could be like owned from foreigners in Vietnam. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's still a minority, but we do a lot of we do a project a lot, or one big project with a lot of screws and fasteners that are kind of precision for higher end kind of cars and whatnot. And yeah, that factory is actually Japanese owned and managed. So all the engineers in house are Japanese engineers, even though they're doing production in Vietnam. Yeah.
What are payment terms like in Vietnam? So we know that in China, it's usually in many scenarios 30 up front and then 70 before shipping. What's it usually like in Vietnam?
That's standard in Vietnam too. You're going to have to pay like a lot of mold cost in advance and upstart costs sometimes, which can push it 50-50, but generally for most projects, 30-70 is the norm.
A lot of the time before I would do make molds in China, I would start off with either, if it's possible, a silicone mold or a 3D mold. Is that something that is easy to do in Vietnam or not as much?
Yeah, you can do molds in Vietnam fairly easily. Like the mold costs can be pretty high, but yeah, it's something you can definitely do in Vietnam. And
then so we spoke about payment terms, and then how do you usually pay Vietnamese?
I mean, bank transfer still the standard, but there are services like TransferWise or Beam or a few others, ping pong payments that you can use. For small orders, we'll use TransferWise, or sample orders typically PayPal. But yeah, bank transfer tends to be the standard. Obviously, got to check everything in advance, but yeah,
I feel like I didn't ask one of the most important questions, and it's their English skills, because we need to be able to communicate.
Oh yeah, it's worse than China. Like I was talking about earlier, like they tend to staff their sales positions with engineers more than salespeople, and so you do deal with a lot of people who have very basic English, and factories are getting better about hiring at least one not native level or higher level English speaker, which does make it easier, especially the bigger factories. But for many factories, we are dealing with people with minimal skills. We personally, our Cosmo has a team in Vietnam, so they obviously are fully bilingual, and so it does give us access to more factories. But yeah, for most people, I would say 50% have native English skills or good English skills.
Okay, I'm just quickly sifting through all the questions that we have here. Suddenly I see so many comments. Let me just quickly see. David said 500 is reasonable. It's so much similar. Okay, I don't know specifically what people are talking about there. Something I learned from, okay, let's bring this up. I like compliments. Something I learned from Sharon is to have an inspection done on every purchase order. Is this recommended or standard in Vietnam? I don't care where you're sourcing from. You always have
always get inspection. Yeah, trust but verify, and always verify.
People need to remember that it doesn't matter even if you're working with a supplier for 20 years. There could have been this one new worker that did this one new thing, and you didn't have an inspection done. And on that one time that you didn't have an inspection done, like, honestly, it's the best word I've got. It's just going to fuck up your entire order. So, spend that $200,
factories change management and all the time, and even ownership all the time too. So even like you said, working for a factory for years, all of a sudden maybe they got bought out or have brought in a new manager and decided to, save money by cutting costs. It happens all the time.
I know
So
that some countries around China also celebrate and close down in Chinese New Year. Does Vietnam or not? Oh, it does.
yeah, it's Tet. It's the same day, or same days as Chinese New Year. So that's their big holiday. And there's a handful of different holidays throughout the year that are just a few day holiday. That's not huge, but yeah, Tet's the big one, and that's pretty effectively the same as Chinese New Year. We plan the same as, so it's about a 2-week vacation, typically around February.
In China, a lot of the workers obviously don't live where they work, as in they have to travel back when it's holidays. Is it similar to that in Vietnam, where a lot of people have to, in the holiday, travel, to get back home, and then they stay there for a long time,
Yeah,
like a week or so?
they do, but I would say more people. I say it's more common for the people who live near the factories in Vietnam than it is in China, and that's because there's really just a few different population centers in Vietnam versus China. So I wouldn't say it's not as big as migration as China. China's massive.
Massive, crazy.
But yeah.
Cool. I mean, I feel like we went through everything that I did want to ask a question about. I wrote this in my notes about the technology in Vietnam. China is, like the crazy technology when it comes to China. How's Vietnam when it comes to technology?
They're pretty good about getting advanced manufacturing set up. Definitely in the last few years, I think there's been, like, since the trade war, really, there's been massive investments in in Vietnam, in terms of getting manufacturing up to speed, and factories see this, and banks are free to give out credit knowing this. So they have massively improved their supply chains in terms of machinery. So you get extremely advanced, like 3D additive type machineries, like, and whatnot. It seems like when we do wooden goods, like they have super advanced, like imported from Germany, CNC machining, so they can get extremely precise. There's 3D printing for soles of shoes nowadays, so they definitely have some good advanced manufacturing now.
Okay, so someone sent me a message because they, for some reason, couldn't ask the question here. How can you find or browse supplies in Vietnam? Okay, we already answered that question. For people that sell cut and sew products, or let's just say a bag, for example. So they would come with, like you said, that it's really, really important in Vietnam compared to like China. You have to have your tech pack, so you have to have your specification sheets. Would it be like, let's just say I already make a bag or luggage. I think Vietnam's also good at luggage, right?
Yeah.
Like actual. If I already make it in China and now I want to move that to Vietnam, so would it be, what I do a lot of the times is I buy stuff from around the world and then I send it to the Chinese supplier and I'm like, this is what I want. Is that normal to do with Vietnam as well?
Yeah, that's pretty normal. I would say half the projects will just get people who will send samples, and they can reverse engineer, but it definitely helps when we have both the product spec sheets and the physical sample. But it's fairly normal to do physical samples like that, especially for basic items. Like luggage and baggage is pretty good for that. What about
macrame and jute products are really, really popular now with all like the boho theme and stuff. Is macrame or like jute products I know my accent sometimes can be, so I'm saying jute. Is that like are they products that you can source in Vietnam as well?
Yeah, we do a lot with seagrass and rattan, so it's fairly similar. I definitely think it's pretty feasible. We actually do tons of rattan projects. I haven't mentioned that, rattan, wicker, and stuff of that nature. I think Vietnam's a good place for that.
All right, cool. We're almost at the hour. It goes by fast, I know, but we're almost there. So first of all, Jim, thank you so much for coming on. We have had a few questions here of how people can contact you. They say, David asked, can you share the Cosmo site link? Can you just tell people where, if they want to get a hold of you, where can they contact you?
Yeah, so you can reach me by email at info@cosmosourcing.com, and my website is cosmosourcing.com.
Cosmo, COSM,
COSMO.
Yeah, I had to think about that.
SOURCING.com. Yeah, cosmosourcing.com.
Cool.
No
And then I
spaces, no hyphens
found,
or anything.
do people also reach you on LinkedIn?
They can. Yeah, if you want to add me on LinkedIn, I'm just
It's
there as
funny
Jim
how, like,
Kennemer, and
the
I'm
normal
not too
world,
active on LinkedIn.
people communicate through LinkedIn, and then I find everyone on Facebook. That's how I found you. I sent you the message on Facebook.
Yeah.
I was like, should
Yeah,
I
exactly.
reach out to you here or here? Awesome. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, you said info@cosmosourcing.com or
Yep.
www.cosmosourcing.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can
Awesome.
find me on LinkedIn at Jim Kennemer at LinkedIn. I'm on Jim Kennemer on all the socials. And I got a LinkedIn page for Cosmo Sourcing that I don't think I've updated in months.
Cool. So is there any
There you
last
go.
word on sourcing from Vietnam, or do you feel like we covered the most important stuff?
I think covered most of it, but yeah, I mean, Vietnam's a great option. I say it's second best to China. And what they do specialize in, they're really good at. I definitely think Vietnam is definitely the second best option behind China for mini goods, in general manufacturing. So if you want to source from Vietnam, do it.
You know what? I
There's no
just
reason not
realized that I
to.
didn't ask you, and this always happens to me when it comes to the
Oh,
hour. And I'm
wow.
like, shit, I didn't ask. The one question I didn't ask you is about like labor costs. So we did say labor cost is around 10%. You said
Yeah.
cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we did actually talk
Yeah.
about it. Now that I think about it, we did.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. It's going up though. Yeah, once Apple moved manufacturing there, like took up 100,000 people, and when you hire 100,000 people, it does raise cost. So it's going up. I feel like it's going up everywhere though. So it's really more of a question: is it going up faster than China or not?
Yeah, that's true. All right, Jim, thank you so much. If anyone wants to reach me, you can also find me, Sharon Evan, on all the socials, and my YouTube channel, Sharon Evan, and my Facebook group, the Amazon FBA Alphas. Isabella will be back on Monday, and Danny will be back on Tuesday. And Jim, thanks again for hopping on.
Thank you.
And thank you for everyone that was listening.
It's a pleasure.
And
Thanks very much, everybody.
thank you, and bye, everyone.